This video is brought to you by the Abbey Community Skills Society. Hey guys, welcome back. So I kind of lied. We do need to make one extra video, which will be how to create our pop-up or our user interface. This is the game over sign that you see, and also the restart game button that the player can click on and it'll restart the whole game. So let's do this quickly. Now, before I do any of this, I do want to make sure that we've all got the right screen size. So if you haven't already, then please go over to project settings. In the general tab, scroll down. So on the left hand side here, scroll down until you find display, window, set the width to be 400 and the height to be 600, and turn off resizable. This way we all have the same game screen, and you can close this window. Okay, so once that's all done, to do a user interface, it's always good to pick out a font first. And we did pick out a font, but we haven't turned it into a resource yet. To turn it into a resource, we need to right click in our file system, make a new resource. We're going to search for font, create a dynamic font, and then click create. We can save it in the root folder, that's fine. We'll just call it font.tres and save. Then once you've created this font file, you need to select it with the left click, go to the font drop down, and in the font data, we're going to just click load and drop in the font that you downloaded off the internet. In my case, it's the luckiest guy regular font. Okay. One last thing is we need to make sure that it's got the right size. So I'm going to increase the settings and size of the font to be 40. You can play around with this number if you need to have a different font size. Okay, so now that the font is set up, let's go back to our scene. It's an empty scene, and let's start building it. So the first, we'll be creating what's called a pop-up. So let's search for a pop-up. A pop-up is kind of like a user interface, but it has this special behavior that pops up when something happens and then can go away. So let's add a pop-up. In the settings for the pop-up, so we need to look down on the side here and see all the settings. The only one that really matters is our margin. I want to make sure that the margin is set to be 400 for right and 600 for bottom. Now you're not seeing anything change. That's because pop-ups by default are not visible. So to enable visibility, we need to click this little eyeball, and now it's visible. So now we've got the pop-up window to be the same size as our game screen. That's perfect. One last thing we want this pop-up to do is the pause behavior. So every node has this thing called the pause behavior. So what happens when the game is paused? Well, generally you want everything to just stop processing. But in this case, we do want this guy to process. So in the bottom right hand side here, with the pop-up selected, I'm changing the pause mode to process. So when this pop-up actually appears, because it's a game over, everything else is frozen, we do want to be able to interact with the stuff that's inside this pop-up. Okay, so what do we need to add to this pop-up? Well, let's start by adding a script. So I'm going to right click, attach a script. We can call it popup.gd, that's good. The only thing I want to do is put it into the proper folder. So let's go. I think I have the right folder selected already. Oh, here, pop-up, open. Oh, folder does not exist. Okay, sorry about that. We should make a folder first. So down here, right click, new folder, pop-up. And now that I got this folder created, I can go back to my pop-up node up here, attach a script, inherits pop-up, template empty, path. I'm going to change the path to be the pop-up folder, and then click open and then create. Perfect. So I've got the script. I'm just going to save the script. Sorry, the script is saved already. What I do need to do is I need to save the scene. So I'm going to press Control S to save the scene, go into my pop-up folder, and just leave it as popup.tsc and then save. Okay, so I'm not going to put anything in the script just yet. I'll show you why I created this script once I add the button. So let's go back to our 2D view up at the top here. Select the pop-up. We're going to add some things to it. We'll start with a label. So right click, add child node, search for a label. And we're going to do the rich text label. That allows you to use these special fonts that we've just created. And we're going to click create. Once the label is created, let's start by renaming it to game over. This will just tell you that it's game over. For the text, we're going to say game over on the right hand side here. You can scroll down a little bit, and if you go down to custom fonts and select the normal font, we should be able to load in our font.tres. And there you go, you can see the fonts loaded in. I can stretch this window as long as you have the select mode selected, and I can kind of put it somewhere in the middle of the game. Perfect. So with that, I'm done. Like, the game over label is done. It doesn't have to do anything. It just needs to show up. Moving on, I'm going to add the button now. So let's right click, add child node, search for a button. And we're just doing a regular button. So double click button. For the text, so the button text is a little bit smaller here, but it's over here. We can say restart. And then I can select a font for it. So same thing, I need to scroll down, go to custom fonts, and then once again load and select this font. Okay, so my button is good. I can kind of place it down here. The only thing is I want this button to work. So when you click it, it needs to do something. Well, how do you make it do something? Well, I'm gonna tell this button to trigger something in this script. And the way you can do that is when you have something like a button selected, you can go over to node. And this is the cool thing about Godot. You can send signals to other things. So an object can send, or a node can send signals or trigger events or functions in another, in any script really, by sending these signals. So what I want is when the button is pressed, so this one, so let's double click it and connect to a script. I want to connect it to the Popup script, and I can click connect. And as I do that, notice how the script was empty before, and now I've got this added to the script, which is nice. It just tells me that this function will do something when this specific button is pressed. And what do I want this script to do? Well, I kind of wanted to restart the whole game and then unpause the game. So one way to restart the game in Godot is basically to get tree. So what get tree does is it'll look up past all the nodes and find the root of the tree. So Godot objects are kind of built like into, or Godot scenes and objects are built together in like a big tree, and it has a root, which we haven't built yet. That'll be the next video. So I'm going to get that tree, and I'm going to reload current scene. So that just reloads the main scene. The other thing it also needs to do is it needs to unpause everything that's on that tree. So, oops. So get tree.paused, and we're going to set that to false. And this just unpauses everything. Okay. So that is it. That's the whole script. It's a fairly easy one. And with that, if I go back to the 2D view, I have my pop-up ready. It's ready. There's nothing more to do. I'm just going to disable the view because by default it should be disabled. And yeah, in the next video, we'll throw all this together and finally have our game working. Thank you for watching.